I am 67 years old. I never expected I would start a new life in a place halfway across the world from San Diego. No much money, no family by my side. Just that I could no longer afford to live in my own homeland anymore. I used to be an angry person, always living by plans. But then one day, I understood not every race. To run fast means living deeply. This is the story about starting life over. Not at 30, but at 67 in a small village where I knew no one, spoke none of the local tongue, and became an entirely different person. The reason I had to leave: I am now 67 years old, born and raised in San Diego. My whole life was numbers, plans, working nonstop, thinking I would finally rest at retirement. But no, I was wrong. I received $1,700 a month from pension money. Sounds okay. Until I began to look for a place to live, a studio. Just one small room, nothing special, already cost over $1,600 a month. You heard it right, one room. And then almost all my pension disappeared the moment I touched it. I hadn't eaten yet. Hadn't gone anywhere, couldn't afford car insurance, not to mention medicine, utilities. A little coffee in the morning. I began to realize I couldn't afford to live in the place that used to be home. That sentence hit my chest like a brick. I once thought about living in a car. Many elders in California had to choose that way. Do you know that feeling? I had a lifetime of work. I once owned a small business. I paid taxes, raised kids to school, and now, at this age, I had to think about living in a car. Then I remembered talking to an old girlfriend. She was Filipino. We stayed in touch a few years distant. Just a call now and then. One day I joked, if one day I flew there, would someone meet me? She laughed. Didn't promise anything. But I thought it was an option, though blurry. I looked back at my life in America at that time. No house, no close ones round, no longer enough money to live independently, no more reason to stay. And do you know what made me make the final decision? One afternoon I stood in front of the mirror. I saw an old tired man, a man who once had everything, now left with nothing but a pension letter. I asked myself if not leave. Now then, when I sold what was left, a few pieces of furniture, a few memories, packed 5 boxes, bought a one-way plane ticket. No plan, no road map, no guarantee. Only one thing for sure. I could not stay. And so I left. Not because I wanted adventure, but because I had no other choice. I didn't come to the Philippines to dream. I came to survive. The day I booked the plane ticket, my hands were shaking. I had never left America, never stepped outside California, and now, at 67, I was buying a one-way ticket to a country I only knew from Google Images. I didn't know the language. I knew no one was waiting for me on the other side, but still. I bought the ticket. I remember that day was sunny. I stood in my small kitchen, opened my laptop, looked at the Cebu Pacific ticket. The price was cheap. So cheap I felt like it was the universe inviting me. Michael, just go. And I went. I labeled 5 boxes, some clothes, family photos, a few old tools I had kept for 40 years. I called my old girlfriend, the Filipina, told her I was coming. She said, "I'm not sure if I can pick you up. I live far from Manila." I replied, "It's okay. I just wanted you to know I'm coming." When the plane landed at Niño Airport, I almost held my breath. The air smelled different. The people around spoke a language I couldn't understand. Not a single word. The signs, background music, the announcements, everything was unfamiliar. I rolled my suitcase outside. No one was waiting. No. One called my name. Only long rows of Filipinos greeting loved ones, hugging, crying, laughing, holding banners. And I stood still in the sea of people as if I had just fallen onto another planet. I asked a taxi driver, "Do you know Porrick?" He nodded, took me in his car. We didn't talk much. I only knew that the place I was heading to was a small town, far from the center with no tourists. The road was bumpy. Houses were modest, motorbikes roared past, kids running barefoot in the street. I sat in the back of the taxi, looking out the window, my heart full of doubt. What did I just do? Was I crazy? I arrived in the afternoon. A row of small houses by a dirt road. No signboard, no Wi-Fi. The landlady, a kind elderly woman, led me to my room. The room had only a bamboo bed, a small fan, and the sound of roosters in the distance. My first night in the Philippines, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling. A few lizards crawled across it. No phone, no TV, no car noise, only crickets, distant barking dogs, and the sound of my heartbeat. In that moment, I no longer felt like a retiree. I didn't feel like an American citizen. I just felt like a lonely man who had given up everything, standing at the crossroads of fear and hope. That one-way ticket didn't just bring me to a new land. It brought me to a new person, myself, in a completely different chapter. I used to think I was strong. I used to believe I survived the financial crisis, the psychological war of aging, even a tearful divorce. What else could possibly shake me? I was wrong. Poor AK. The name sounded like a strange echo at first. At town with no big signs, no tall buildings, no malls. On the first day I stepped outside, I suddenly realized I was the only foreigner here. Not one of a few, but the only one. People looked at me, not with malice, but with curiosity in their eyes. The children laughed. Called. Hey Joe. A friendly call, but it still made me feel out of place. I tried to find a familiar coffee shop, Starbucks, 711, MC Donald !SAS. None. No free Wi-Fi, no Google Maps to track where I was. I couldn't even find a working ATM. I went to the market. Everyone was speaking in Kapanan, a dialect I had never heard before. I held a few peso bills, pointed at some vegetables. The seller laughed, used hand signs. I smiled back awkwardly and paid, not even knowing if I had been overcharged. That dinner. Boiled eggs and bananas, no fridge, no gas stove, just a small charcoal stove, outside. I cried in silence. I wasn't used to hearing roosters crow at 3 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't used to bathing with cold water scooped from a drum. I wasn't used to living in a room without air conditioning, where at noon, you feel like you're sitting inside an oven. Every time I needed to go somewhere, I had to call a tricycle, and not the grab kind, no apps. I had to walk out to the alley, wait for someone to pass by, and no one was ever on time. I remember one day I scheduled someone for 8 o'clock a.m. to buy materials for the lodging room. He arrived at 9:15. Not a word of apology. I lost it. I yelled at him in English, while he just scratched his head and smiled slightly. I went back to my room, slammed the door, gasping with anger. I screamed in my head, "What am I doing here? This is not home." But then something inside me began to crack. I looked around, a family of 5 living in a house half the size of my rented room. They cooked together, they laughed together. No one complained. I saw the old lady next door sweeping her yard at 5 o'clock a.m., nodding at me like I was her own grandson. I saw a little boy, no shoes, running on rocky ground, smiling like he had just won the lottery. I sat down on the porch. One afternoon when the sun faded, the sound of motorcycles mixing with the wind, people calling out to each other between the trees, a smoky scent from a cooking fire drifting through the air. And for the first time, I asked myself, am I being taught how to live again? I used to think I came here to survive. But it turns out the things I thought were lacking are the very things teaching me what it means to be truly full. The day I wanted to give up. I'm not good at giving up. All my life, from my youth to running a business, I always tried to see things through even if I lost. I had to lose because I gave it my all. But that morning I stood in the middle of the red dirt road in Porrick, suitcase in hand, face soaked in sweat, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I have to go back to America. The story started with an appointment I had arranged for a local man. His name was Emil, to take me to buy materials to fix the room I was renting. To make it less hot, we agreed to meet at 700 a.m. I woke up at 6 o'clock, boiled water on the charcoal stove to make coffee, put on the cleanest shirt I had. I waited. The clock struck 7, then 7:30, then 8. No message, no call, no explanation. I called. The line was busy. I called again. No answer. I felt disrespected. I felt small, invisible. 8:45. A meal arrived. No rush, no apology, no guilt, just a light sentence. Sir, my tricycle had a flat tire. I stood frozen. I didn't get angry anymore, didn't shout anymore, or I was tired. I went back to my room, took off my shirt, sat on the bamboo bed. The ceiling fan clicked slowly. In that moment, for the first time since arriving in the Philippines, I felt like a failure. Not a failure in money or housing, but a failure in fitting and starting over. I opened the cabinet, took out my passport, flipped to the visa page. I counted the days. I started looking for a flight back to San Diego. But then I looked out the window. Out there, a little boy was sitting by the roadside. That boy often passed by my house, waving and saying, "Good morning, Joe." Today, he didn't wave, but he was drawing something with a small piece of charcoal. I walked out. He looked up, smiled, and showed me a messy little drawing of me, a tin roof house, and a huge heart above it. Below was a sentence in misspelled English. "You are part of this place now." I laughed and I cried, not because I was touched, but because that boy had just said something I'd never thought of. I am part of this place. That night, I sat on the porch. No phone, no laptop. I just listened for the first time. I wasn't trying to control anything. I wasn't trying to force things to happen my way. I let go and I felt so much lighter. I came very close to giving up. But in the end, it was the delay, the silence, and a little boy with a piece of charcoal that made me stay. Since I was young, I was taught that success means having a big house, a nice car, and enough zeros in your bank account. And I used to believe that was true until I lived here among people who have nothing yet seem to have everything. Ailing Rosa was the first neighbor to greet me. A thin woman hunched back, always wearing the same faded floral blouse. She sells vegetables in the morning market. Her house has no cement walls, just sheets of tin patched together. Yet every time I walked by, she would call out loudly, "Michael Cuman Connor, have you eaten breakfast?" And sometimes she would slip into my hand a ripe mango, a handful of herbs, no charge, no reason. Then there was a boy named Jar, the kid who drew me with a piece of charcoal. He lives with his mother and grandmother in a small hut by the river. Every day after school, he runs past my house just to hand me a piece of candy, a pretty shell, or a scrap of paper with misspelled English. I wish you were my grandpa. One day it rained hard. I got stuck at the market. No umbrella, no taxi. I was drenched, standing and shivering. A man who looked like a jeepy driver stopped, took off his raincoat, draped it over me, and said, "You are old me." I still strong take it. Then he climbed back on his jeep, started the engine, and drove off, soaking wet as if it was nothing. I don't understand why they were so kind to me. I brought them nothing I didn't speak. The language. I was a stranger, yet they treated me like family in America. I used to live in a high-end neighborhood. My neighbors drove Teslas, did yoga every morning, but no one knew each other's name. Here, people don't need much. No one shows off their phone. No one flaunts designer shoes. They only ask, "Do you have food? Are you tired? Do you need help?" I began to realize that what makes a place feel like home isn't cement walls or air conditioning. It's the eyes that meet yours, the voices that call your name, the small gestures that seem meaningless, but soften your heart in a place many Westerners call poor. I found a kind of wealth I never had in my entire life, unconditional kindness, and calculated sharing, and a heart wide open, always ready to welcome a stranger like me in America. I used to live by an unforgiving biological clock. 6 o'clock wake up, 6:30 coffee, 7 o'clock Zoom meeting, 12 o'clock lunch, 5 o'clock traffic, 9 o'clock collapse into bed. Not even sure if I had truly lived that day in the Philippines. Everything is slower. No one watches the clock. No one rushes. No one apologizes for being 20 minutes late because, honestly, no one sees it as a fault. At first, it drove me crazy. But then one day, while sitting in the market waiting for a tricycle, I began to look round. An old woman was washing vegetables, singing while she worked. A barefoot child dragged a tied-up can, called it a car. A man was weaving bamboo baskets by hand, strand by strand, no hurry. And I asked myself, had I lived a fast that I missed out on life itself? I began learning again, starting from the most basic things, learning how to eat. Here. Food doesn't come from the supermarket. No plastic containers, no green organic labels. Eggs are gathered that morning. Chickens are slaughtered the day before fish are still breathing. When I buy them, at first I couldn't adjust. I saw meat stalls with no freezer, no gloves, and I wanted to walk away. But then I tasted a mango sweeter than any I'd had from Whole Foods. A bowl of sinigang, tangy and hot, made me sweat but warmed my soul. A scoop of plain white rice, just rice that tasted strangely amazing. Learning how to live. I learned how to walk. Not for exercise, but to see the coconut trees, the rusty tin roofs, the man selling fish asleep on his store. I learned how to wait. Not because I had to, but because there was no need to rush. I learned how to talk without the internet. No likes, no shares, just a nod, a cup of black coffee and a story with no beginning or end. Learning how to slow down. I used to think slow living meant laziness, but I realized slow doesn't mean stopping. Slow means finally noticing what's really happening in your life. I used to live like a high-speed train. No stops, no scenery. Here I live like a man walking. And for the first time in decades, I feel that every step I take has meaning. I came here to survive, but the Philippines taught me something more valuable than survival. To slow down so I can live deeply. I used to think I had prepared very well. Before leaving San Diego, I packed every single item carefully: a compact coffee maker, a set of premium kitchen knives from Japan, a vintage watch I loved, a few photo frames, a suitcase full of neatly pressed clothes, long-sleeve shirts, leather shoes, a laptop, backup hard drive, even a small portable printer. Everything was divided into 5 boxes, each labeled by category. I called it everything I need for a new life. But just a few weeks living in Porac, I realized I was wrong, completely wrong. The coffee maker not usable, no stable electricity here. And the coffee sold here comes in small hot cups, 10 pesos each, more aromatic than any I ever tasted in San Diego. The Japanese knives too sharp. I was afraid the neighbor might cut herself when borrowing one here. They use one large, slightly rusty knife, and they use it for a lifetime. The vintage watch, every time I wore it, sweat would cause the leather strap to mildew. I put it in a drawer and never touched it again. Truth is, nobody here needs to know what time it is. The laptop, I only open it to video call my grandchildren or to write a few lines in a journal. And the clothes. I used to think I needed to maintain a professional image to appear dignified. But that $120 Ralph Lauren shirt got stained with mud after just one tricycle ride. The leather shoes sank in the mud after a rainy afternoon. But the 20 peso t-shirt I bought from the night market, I wore it all week and it was fine. No one judged. No one noticed. What a relief it was not to dress for anyone else anymore. I began opening each box. Box number 1, kitchenware. I kept one small pot and 2 spoons. Box number 2, documents, papers, property copies, old letters. I burned part of it, kept a few photos. Looking at them, I saw how tangled my old life had been. Box number 3, winter clothes. I laughed here. Cold means 24 degrees Celsius. After 3 months, I only used items from one single box. The rest I gave to the villagers, to children, to the old neighbor. Surprisingly, the more I gave away, the lighter I felt. Then one day, I wrote on the side of a cardboard box, "I give up." I didn't give up on life. I didn't give up on purpose. I only gave up the idea that I needed to. Much to be happy. I used to believe a person's value was in what they owned, the house they lived in, the car they drove, the clothes they wore. But here, people judged me by how I greeted them, how I behaved, how I smiled, not by what I had in my hands. Now I no longer remember how many pairs of shoes I once owned, but I clearly remember the look in Jar's eyes when I gave him an old sweatshirt. His eyes lit up like I had given him the whole world. I no longer need things to define who I am. I only need to return to who I truly am. I brought to many things, but what I truly needed, I had forgotten. The freedom from possessions, the release from image, the peace of living simply. I used to be very sick. Now I'm healthier than ever. I came to the Philippines in poor health. Actually, very poor health before leaving. I had a history of a mild stroke. One side of my face had once gone numb. Doctors in San Diego warned me, you need to avoid the sun, avoid strain, rest regularly, and get frequent heart checkups. I gave a forced smile because I couldn't afford to rest regularly. My life at that time was stress. Rushed meals, medication, and restless sleep on an old rented sofa in someone's living room. I lived every day wondering where my heart stopped today. Then I came here in my first week in Porrick. I fainted while carrying 2 containers of well water back to my room. The sun was 36. No one was nearby. I lay on the ground for over 10 minutes. No one knew. That day I truly thought I will die. Quietly, anonymously in a place 12,000 kilometers from home. But strangely, I didn't die. I slowly recovered little by little. I no longer ate frozen burgers. I ate green vegetables from people's home gardens. I drank boiled water. I slept at 8 p.m. No TV, no Wi-Fi, no blue light. I woke up at 5 o'clock a.m. with the sound of roosters and sunlight slipping through the thatched roof. I no longer sat still all day. I walked to the market. I swept the yard. I washed dishes by hand. Simple things, but they got me gently moving every day. After 3 months, I no longer felt tightness in my chest. After 6 months, I didn't need sleeping pills. After 1 year, a doctor in Manila did a full checkup and said, there are no signs of early heart disease anymore. Blood pressure is stable. Heart rate is regular. Blood sugar is good. I couldn't believe my ears. I laughed like a child. So, I'm healthy now. Then another time I got pneumonia from walking in the rain. I went to the local health center. No appointment, no insurance. I was seen after 20 minutes. The doctor gave me a prescription and requested a chest x-ray. X-ray cost $280, about $530. Consultation fee $30, about $6. Total cost less than $12. Time from when I walked into holding the medicine in my hand and 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. In America, just booking an appointment takes a week. Not to mention a $120 consultation fee, a $2,000 ray fee, and the cost of meds. Here, everything is simple and humane. I started to understand, not because the healthcare system here is superior, but because people genuinely care. The nurse greeted me with a smile. The doctor called me Sir Mike. The boy in charge of parking held an umbrella over me when it rained. I used to think growing old meant sickness. But now, every morning, I wake up with a whisper to myself. I'm still alive and I'm living better than ever. I didn't come here to find medicine. I found something more important, a healing rhythm of life through simplicity, kindness, and closeness to nature. The first time I truly laughed in 10 years, I used to laugh a lot. Laugh at parties, laugh in front of clients, laugh at bar jokes. But I realized that for nearly 10 years, I hadn't truly laughed. The kind of laugh that isn't forced, isn't polite, isn't for a reason. The kind of laugh that makes you forget how sad you once were. It came on a rainy afternoon in July in Porrick. When it rains, it pours like the sky is washing away all the dust from this land. I was sitting on the porch, sipping black coffee when the rain came. Suddenly, thunder, lightning, and heavy drops pounding on the tin roof. The village kids, instead of running, rushed into the street. Maybe 6 or 7 of them. They splashed through puddles like they were swimming in a pool. One boy jumped into a mud pit, spraying dirt all over the others. Another slipped and fell, but slapped his thigh and laughed out loud. They wore no shirts. Their shorts were soaked. Their eyes sparkled like little stars under the gray sky. I stood up, moved, my chair closer to the edge of the porch, sat and watched. For the first time in so long, I felt my heart as light as the rain. One kid looked up and saw me. He yelled, "Come, Joe, join us." I shook my head, smiled. He ran over, pulled my hand, laughing innocently. Joe's scared. And I laughed, truly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I realized I had forgotten this feeling. The laugh lasted. I tilted my head up to the sky, let a few drops fall on my forehead, my eyes, my mouth. In that moment, I was no longer a 67-year-old man who had left America. I was just a child who knew he was still alive. That night, I wrote in my journal, maybe I don't need anything. Just a rainstorm, a few kids, and a reason to laugh. People go looking for joy in big things. But me, I found it in a damp afternoon where children taught me life doesn't have to be perfect, just real. I'm nitrogen monoxide longer afraid of losing anything. My whole life I feared loss. I feared losing my job, feared losing my home, feared losing my place in society, feared losing my image. And deeper than all that, I feared losing myself. I used to live in a two-story house in San Diego, had a garage and open kitchen, a fancy sofa, and a big screen TV. But every night, I locked the main door 3 times, the back door twice. I installed security cameras, set up alarms, and still couldn't sleep well. At the time, I thought I was being careful, but really I was just afraid when I went bankrupt, had to sell the house and leave. I thought that was the end. I sat in a coffee shop looking at my bank account with exactly $211. I remember that number clearly, like a small blade in my memory. I was trembling, not from cold, but from fear of losing even more. Then I came to the Philippines. No property, no insurance contract, no emergency savings. Just one backpack and one question lingering in my mind every day. If everything disappears today, what will I still have? One time I left my wallet in a tricycle. It had all the cash I had withdrawn for the week. I thought, that's it, my life's crashing again. 3 years later, the driver came to my lodging, returned the wallet untouched, not missing a single peso. He just smiled, patted my shoulder. We take care of each other here. That moment, I sat down, wallet in hand. And I didn't cry from joy. I cried because I realized I was no longer afraid of loss. I had nothing left to lose. Because I was no longer attached to anything. No house, no car, no long-term contracts, no thick tax records, no deadlines, no KPIs, no invisible race at all. Just me and a simple life, but real. I used to fear death, but now I fear more the idea of living a life where I don't truly show up each day. One day someone asked me, "Aren't you afraid of getting sick, being robbed, being tricked?" I replied, I used to be afraid of many things, but when you've survived loneliness, nothing else is scarier than that. Now I lock my door just once, not because I'm careless, but because I trust people. And more than that, I believe that if I do lose something, I have enough peace not to break apart anymore. When you're no longer afraid of losing, that's when you truly own your life. I used to think that to make friends, you needed similarities. Same age, same class, same interests, same language. But in Porrick, I learned one simple thing. Friendship doesn't need language, only a heart. I met Raoni, the tricycle driver who usually parks in front of the market on a scorching hot morning. I was struggling to carry a sack of rice drenched in sweat. When he came close, grabbed the sack, drove me home, and never mentioned a price. I pulled out my wallet, asked how much. He just smiled, shook his head. Next time, it's okay. And from that day on, he became my first friend here. Raoni is around 60, a few years older than me, with dark skin, a thin frame, and a weathered face. He doesn't speak English, just a few words. Hello, okay, good rain market. I couldn't manage a full sentence in Kapampangan. Yet every time I went to the market, he showed up, always ready, always smiling, like he was saying, "I'm here. Mike, let me take care of it." We never talked much, but we understood each other through the little things. When I pointed to a cloudy sky, he nodded and pulled out his raincoat. When I sighed at rising rice prices, he patted my shoulder and handed me a banana. When I was sad, just silent, he stayed quiet, too, but still sat beside me. One time I caught a cold and didn't go to the market for 3 days. On the fourth morning, I heard a knock at the door. It was Raoni holding a paper bag. Inside were a few oranges, a pack of cough drops, and a cold can of beer. He didn't say much, just held it out and said 3 words for you, friend. I sat there, eyes stinging. I realized for the first time in years, someone cared about how I was doing, not about my wallet, my name, or my resume. One evening, I invited Raoni to my house. We sat on the porch, drank beer. No music, no Wi-Fi, no dictionary. We spoke through smiles, body language, cheers of clinking cans, and nods like 2 old men who had lived a whole life together. I told a few stories in English. He didn't understand but still laughed because he could feel the energy in my words and me. I didn't understand a thing he said in his dialect, but I heard the sincerity in his voice. I've never called Raoni my best friend. No selfies, no hashtags, no stories. We just showed up for each other whenever it mattered. Some friends don't need to speak your language. They just need to see you, understand you, and stand by you when no one else does. Raoni is one of those people. And if you're lucky, you will have a Ramon in your life. All my life I lived in mortgaged houses paid in monthly installments. Always double-door entrances, modern kitchens, thick carpets to car garages. But strangely enough, in those 40 years, I never built a house. I only bought places to stay. In Porrick, after more than a year of renting, I began to think about settling down. Not because I felt lacking, but because I wanted to create a place I could call home. The piece of land I bought sat at the end of a dirt road near her rice field, surrounded by thatched houses, barking dogs, and the smell of firewood each afternoon. The paperwork was simple. I asked a local friend to help with the name. Everything was small, humble, simple. I didn't build a mansion. I only built a single-story house, tin roof, bare brick walls, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, a wide porch to sit tea in the morning, and 1 empty room reserved for someone. People asked me, Michael, why do you need a spare room? You live alone. I smiled, replied, because I no longer want to live alone. I thought of my son, now in Oregon, busy, distant. I thought of my grandson, who one day might wonder where his grandpa went, how he lived. I thought of Raoni in case one day he needs a place to rest. I thought of any old friend like me, lost, lonely, from a faraway land. I didn't build a house to own property. I built it to create a kind space, a shelter, a place where anyone would feel welcome. In that empty room, I placed a bamboo bed, a wall painting, a shelf with a few old books, nothing luxurious, but enough for someone walking in to feel. Someone thought of me before I arrived. One day, the vegetable lady asked, "How long do you plan to stay here?" I replied, "Until I don't feel the need to run anymore." And truly, since the day the house was finished, I stopped worrying where to go next. I'm no longer a possibly. I'm no longer a tourist. I am part of this place. And this place is a part of me. I used to dream of a perfect house. But in the end, what I built was a place where others could walk into, not just to stay, but to belong. No one talks about money here. In America, money is talked about every day. In the home, on the street, in the news, over meals, stock prices, gas prices, housing prices, how much salary, how much profit, how much debt. I got used to money appearing in every conversation. But in Porrick, no one asked how much money I had. No one wondered how much pension I received. No one asked if I owned a house in America. No one cared who I used to be, what I used to do, or how much I used to earn. One time I was drinking coffee with a group of trickle drivers. We just laughed, talked about chickens, the weather, and the local football team. I pulled out my wallet, ready to pay for everyone. One of them gently tapped my hand, said, "Don't show money too much." Just enjoy. I froze for the first time. Someone advised me not to let money get between hearts. I remember one evening I invited Raoni and two neighbors for dinner. A simple meal: grilled chicken, white rice, boiled vegetables, a few cans of beer. They arrived, bringing gifts: a pumpkin, a basket of mangoes, a bunch of herbs. No one asked about the value of the gift. No one compared who brought more. They just placed it on the table, smiling. Bracio, chicken for you, my friend. I used to think not talking about money was avoiding the truth. But here I learned not talking about money means it's not needed to define someone's worth. People ask me, "Are you feeling well today? Have you had breakfast? Did you sleep well last night? Would you like to go to Sunday church?" No. One asks, "How much do you spend in a month?" In America, I used to feel pressure every time I met friends. The pressure to dress well, drive the right car, pay for dinner, split the bill to the exact cent. Here, I once had a meal of dried fish, cold rice, and fish sauce, and felt rich. I've never seen anyone here compare themselves to others. They live their life in their own way. No envy, no chasing, no judging. And then one day, I looked at myself in the mirror. No branded watch, no expensive leather wallet, and I saw I looked poorer than before, but had never felt this full in a place where money is not the measure. I learned to see people not through the brands they wear, but through the way they live in when money no longer defines value. It's human connection that finally speaks. I chose to be here, but I'm still a father when I decided to leave America. The only person I feared hurting was my son. I remember that day. We were on a video call. I said, "I'm moving to the Philippines for a while, maybe for a long time." He paused for a few seconds, then asked, "Are you planning to stay there forever?" I answered, "Maybe. But I'm still your father." My son didn't say much, but I knew there was something that froze inside him, like a fear of being left behind, and I understood. I had been an imperfect father. I missed soccer games, parent meetings, dinners where my son ate alone because I was stuck in meetings. I tried to earn money for the family, but never really showed up for my family. When my grandson was born, I received the first photo through a message: a wrinkly tiny baby sleeping in his mother's arms. I cried not from joy, but because I knew I wouldn't be there when he crawls, when he walks, when he calls grandpa for the first time. But then one afternoon, sitting on my porch watching the sunset, I thought, if I choose to go back to the US out of guilt, then I'm repeating the same old mistake. Living by emotion, not by kindness. I don't need to live close to be a father. I need to be honest with my love. Need to send a message each week. Check in. Show care. Need to let my son know I'm not with you every day, but I've never left your heart for even a minute. I built a house with a spare room for my grandson. One day, I want him to come here, sit on the steps, and look out at the sunburnt rice fields. I'll tell him stories about the early days when his grandpa lived like a lost child only to find himself again in this unfamiliar place. I'll teach him how to live slowly, how to wait, how to smile at strangers, how to live without fear of losing, how to live like someone who once thought they had lost it all. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know that ever since I've lived here, I've lived as if each day is a letter to my children and grandchildren. Being a father is not about living next to them. It's about living deeply, truthfully, lovingly, so that no matter where I am, my heart is always present in the hearts of those I love. A life worth living. I used to think my life had ended at 67. I had no job, no home, no role in society, no one who truly needed me. I thought I was just surviving. A shadow in a rented room somewhere in the middle of an aging, fast-paced America. But I was wrong. Very wrong. 3 years living in Pork taught me one simple truth. Life never runs out of chances, if you're brave enough to begin again. I came to the Philippines with nothing but my bare hands. Literally no connections, no language, no possessions. But now I have a small house, a community, true friends, and a heart more whole than ever before. I used to be afraid people would ask, "What are you doing here? Who are you in this countryside?" But no one asked because they didn't need to know who you were. They only needed to see how you lived. I lived through quiet mornings with black coffee, through waves from kids every afternoon after school, through the sound of roosters, church bells, and early market chatter. I lived through the simplicity that America had once taken away from me and found myself again in the smallest things. Someone once said to me, "You gave everything up just to find peace." No, I didn't give anything up. I only returned what never truly belonged to me in exchange for something I never believed I could have a life worth living. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I won't be here anymore. Maybe my health won't allow me to walk to the market each day or sip coffee with Ramon every evening. But whatever happens, I know one thing for sure. I was reborn at 67 in a land once foreign with a sincere heart and a quiet belief that everyone deserves a new beginning. If you're 40, 50, 60, if you feel your life is like a candle about to go out, believe me, you can still begin again. All it takes is a plane ticket, a little courage, and a heart ready to receive kindness. Thank you for staying until the end, and if this story touched you, please share it as a message to those feeling lost in life, because who knows? Maybe they too are waiting for a chance to begin again.